Welcome to our garden. We are starting with the meadow, which we actually reseeded 3 times this year just to make sure that it will well establish. This is its first year. This is the beginning of the September, so the meadow is starting getting over, but there's still plenty of flowers and insects around. So walking through one of our pathways from the very end where our house is towards the back of the garden. Here in the middle, we're walking through a cut path towards the main vegetable garden, or as we call it. We have a strawberry bed. This is the second of our 2 ones, with some later fruiting strawberries, and this is actually all season variety. That's the main reason why in September they're actually still fruiting. So at the beginning I wasn't quite sure of this variety. I don't actually remember how it is called. I have so many different ones, but they do start late in the season. Because of that, we have this very small but slow, nice trickle of strawberries throughout, let's say September, or August and so on, when there's no other strawberries anymore. So it's kind of nice to have actually these few plants kind of producing. They are linked to the light, so they go really late into autumn, but there just simply is not enough sunshine for them to ripen. So I actually wonder how they will do in a greenhouse. They might do better. There's the same strawberries I put in my, this is a veg bed for my girls. And this whole veggie bed had loads of peas, which meant to be dwarf but wasn't exactly dwarf, and it ended up being sugar snap as opposed to eating peas. They were not really tasty to be eaten straight from the pod like that. You see, they are very kind of light pale green color, and when I tried them quite a few times, they tasted bitter, so I didn't like them. But when my mom was visiting, she kind of didn't know that they were not really nice, and she used them in a soup, and that bitterness did disappear in a soup. So we actually managed to pick up about, it was almost 2 kilograms of peas I have in the freezer just from those bushes there. This is just leftover. I left for my girls if they would want to eat some. Here's just some daikon. See that I've put some beetroots with them, and of course there's the sweet corn, my daughter's favorite vegetable, more or less. Those unfortunately didn't grow and didn't do really much this year. I have tried growing them last year and they did a bit better. I thought we didn't have a huge cobs of sweet corn, but it's always nice to try. This is the strawberry beds with varieties which start earlier. So there's actually 3 different varieties. They're all mixed through now, but kind of starting from the left, the earliest one, towards the right, the slightly later, late midsummer, well actually early summer and midsummer. And here you can see behind our fruit cage for raspberries, it's just kind of briefly showing you, it kind of extends farther out towards the currants. And there are currants and gooseberries farther out there, and there you can see the length of it is quite a large one. Just some pots in which I grow potatoes, and actually there's a lot of pots. I do grow a lot of potatoes in pots because we do have a vase, and I found that in the soil somehow, I don't know, the soil clamps to the potato, and we always have a skin problem when they're grown in the ground. And at this point we just grow in the pots, those containers. Actually helps me to start them early in the spring in the greenhouse, so I have some earlier ones variety. There's a few more pots here with the variety Sapromira, which is actually, I'm quite sure, is the main, so there will be much later, but I generally try to have some first early, second early, often some salad potatoes as well. I have some red ones I'll show you later, and then yeah, some main ones. And I do recycle the soil afterwards, so that's why it's left in a pot, because it feels wasteful for me to throw it away. So I'll put it in the places where I do not really worry about the fact that they don't have much nutrition in them. And here we have the veggie bed with most of the brassicas. There are some cauliflower, broccolini, and cabbages. They're obviously very overgrown, and I just kept that net because I didn't really want the butterfly, cabbage butterfly, to come in there, and they just really grew quite far. And I did overplant. I know I did. I put them far too near, and I think I had a mess up with what's broccolini, what's broccoli, and yeah, the spacing wasn't quite right there, but yeah, they're growing, they're doing all right, despite this condition. And here you can see I have a few climbing beans as well on the back. So here we have another of my climbing. This is borlotti, and this is a bean we grew last year for dry pots. I told you can eat the green pots as well, and I grew very small amount of them, but they were so incredibly delicious that I didn't know if it's the variety or is the fact that I grew them myself and it somehow made them taste better. But seriously, I've never been a fan of using dried beans in soups or anything, and when I used the ones I grew here, they were so delicious that I decided to grow more, and I had this whole arch of the borlotti for drying. Needless to say, this Scottish summer was really bad. Here we have the other arch from the other side. There are different variety. There is cherry yoki, trail of tears planted here, but the thing is that because of the weather, unfortunately, these got knocked back so badly. I have 2 or 3 times reseeded them. I started them in a greenhouse, planted them out. They didn't really do very well. Then I seeded some more here, seeded more in a greenhouse, planted out the ones from the greenhouse, and the seeds that finally grew. But this is beginning of September, and they're just starting. So seriously, there's not going to be chance to get any dried beans from them. But I can pick some as a green beans just to cook for dinner and so on. This cherry yoki one had amazing energy to them when I opened the pack. You know, they were really black beans. I have never grew them before. Unfortunately, I used the whole pack on those three goes to try to seed them, and I'm not going to be able to pick any of my own seeds, so I will need to buy them again because I really am intrigued in how they're going to taste and how they're going to behave here. Maybe it is a bit cold for them in Scotland, but I do buy the seeds from the Real Seeds company, which they generally have them slightly more acclimatized for the UK climate. Yeah, so this is just another climber. This one was just a kind of a chance purchase because I ran out of the bean seeds, and I just really I added it because it was on some kind of sale, and actually it's quite nice bean. It's a purple, as I said, that's called blauhild, maybe, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but how to say it, but yeah, it's just a, you know, climbing purple bean, and they grew all right. I mean, like these and the bolotti produce some flowers and some beans, so at least we managed to try them. As typical with any of the purple beans, they do lose color once you cook them, and this shows very green, but they do get more purple once they grow a bit bigger. These are super tiny. These are as well is just beginning of the cropping, so it's just been really quite disappointing year with quite a few crops, but yeah, let's leave that. Okay, so here we have some salsify. I see that beginning of the year is growing really well. I have never grew salsify. This is the first time I have attempted that. I tried and I wanted a few times, but I think I had really bad seeds before, and I probably have yet again overseeded. I do have a tendency to overplant and overseed, or forgot to thin things. It is quite a few. I think they meant to have a bit more spacing between them, and I did try to I think I put a bit more of them together because I have assumed that I may thin them or some seeds may not come up. For a change, all the seeds came up. There are some beetroots and leeks. These are all started in plugs in the greenhouse and then planted out later on. And here as well some beetroots. I did have some turnips there as well. Then there's more beetroots in that veggie patch as well, with some celeriac and the lettuces planted in between them, just for, you know, for eating. Here we're coming from the main veggie garden from the other side through the other veggie garden. So we have another veggie garden we will come back to in a second, passing by the chickens, and that's the other side of the current fruit and raspberry fruit cage. So yes, you were coming to the same patch, so you can see the one with the salsify on your right, and then obviously there's more the one with the beetroots. Few celeriacs are doing quite alright. Some more lettuces, and here actually some spring cabbage planted, a bit more leeks. Oh, and in this veggie bed I have had a broad beans earlier on, so we have just took all the broad beans, which did actually really well. There is my flower bed, and this year I really wanted to have more flowers. And here is my courgette, or squash or so on, veggie bed. So we have a yellow courgettes here and green patipán and some gherkins. I'm quite sure there's a kale in the middle. I have some leeks plugged in between because I have some extra plants and I just didn't want to throw them away. And I have had started some of these courgettes and the cold frame here. Well, I didn't start them, I planted them and put cold frame over them. But the reality is that I have not seen any difference. So the ones on the very edge had cold frame over them, and the yellow courgettes didn't have the cold frame over them, but yet they kind of end up doing the same. Like, so I love growing patison or patipán because I like marinating them. This is a very sad story with those courgettes, because the reality is that I have tried to grow them now every year. I always try to grow yellow because I think there's more possibility that they will be eaten. I have planted 4 plants, and these are 2 here which actually grew, and I have barely had anything from them. the patipans are doing slightly better. I did manage to pick few, but I picked them very small, like you can see. So courgettes, I kind of expect them to grow maybe bigger. I was hoping that if they will have much more crop, I can pick them small and marinate, and that's why I as well grow patipan, because I do like to pickle them like you would gherkins or so on. The problem with the courgettes is that you can see just here that whenever some of them started growing, they would rot. And we did had very wet and cold summer this year in Scotland, and everywhere. I don't know, UK generally was quite poor weather-wise, so that's probably what causing it. But I did had similar problem with them before, so maybe I really should give up and try to grow different color. I did pluck few gherkins here. I like to spread my crops. I have some in a greenhouse, some here, and they actually do all right outside. They just take much longer. You know, the one in a greenhouse, you obviously will go and have a crop much earlier, but I think I'm going to try to grow like full veggie bed of gherkins next year, because whole aim with the courgettes and patipan and gherkins was to try to grow as much as possible I can to make our own pickles, because we eat a lot of gherkins and a lot of pickles. Here I just added some rucola, sorry, not rucola, rocket, rucola and polish. This is root parsley, guys. So root parsley is something I really like to grow, and it's like a combination of carrot and parsnip but on steroids. So there are very small roots, a bit similar to carrot. They're white, they're a bit like parsnip, but they are much more intense in flavor. This is very popular in Poland. It's called pietruszka, and we use it to make stock because it just has this really lovely flavor. So this is the whole garden, guys. Well, this is the whole central garden, you know. The strawberry, lots of brassicas there, a bit of courgette still on the end of the summer, and some beetroots and leeks here. Oh, guys, so my husband found a frog. The kids were so excited, and that frog just randomly jumped on my hand. Girls absolutely loved it. I was just trying to carry it a bit farther out, and it escaped eventually, which obviously would do. My daughter just loved it. I don't think they often see the frog, so we love looking at all the nature in there, because that's why we do have a meadow to you know, increase the wildlife in there. Are we going farther out towards the back of the garden? So yet again, that's the vegetable garden and the raspberry cages, and here I have actually three raised beds of blueberries. This is just behind what we call our family hub, and this is just a meadow, but there's loads of daffodils for spring planted in here. And yeah, it's just generally meadow, but it was so overgrown with a horsetail. We have a horsetail. That's a story for another day. I could talk and talk about that, but yeah, this is one of the reasons why we have a meadow everywhere and raised beds, because we do have a horsetail, and we just realized we cannot fight it. So we need to just be reasonable with what's doable with maintenance, and therefore I have raised beds instead of growing on the ground, which I did before. Here we do have some of our semi-dwarf fruit trees. So we have a one pear and two apples. One of the apples is not doing very well, but I am hoping, because there are still some leaves and I have pruned it a bit hard, to hopefully get more growth. We'll see what happens. Farther out is what we call our mother tree, which I will talk about later. And here is a pond which I have planted and kind of finished off this summer, this spring of 2024. And this is, you know, first summer we have this pond in particular. Is actually really overgrown with algae, and I tried like the barley barley pouches. I tried some barley capsule. It just doesn't work. I think it's because it's next to the shed where there's lots of water dripping off through the dirt, and it's probably bringing, you know, lots of stuff. It shouldn't really be going in a pond, but there is some growth there. Guys, this is our plum. I think this is green gage. I do not know because we have inherited this tree. It's not doing super great with the plums. There are really, I call it plums, you know, they're really kind of bursting here, but this is probably the largest amount of fruits we have had it on it since we moved in here, and that is because that tree was absolutely crumpled in small tiny greenhouse. So when we moved in, you can just see here that was inside a small greenhouse, and I have been renovating this tree for last 4 years, so that's where it was. And actually it looks quite impressive. It finally looks like a tree, and I wanted to see how they will taste, and it's you know, it looks green, but actually they're very tasty fruits. So even though they didn't look really pretty, they actually were still quite tasty. In the center of our garden, we kept one of those old Bromley mature trees. We call it our mother tree. It's the biggest one in the center of the garden, and we like it there, but it has been heavily pruned. This is how it looked before. There were actually four, and that's the middle one, which, you know, I did work on renovating over the last 3 years. It does work much better now and looks much better. Behind there we have a chicken coop and chicken run, so that's just on the very back of the trees there. Next to the shed here we have a fruit cage for our climbing berries, and that goes alongside the fence, kind of in an L shape towards the greenhouse. So first here we have a purple raspberry, which is a climbing berry, and it's very tall and quite vividly growing, but this one tends to grow quite high, so you can see above the nets of the fruit cage there are sticking out still branches of it. And then we have a Caracas blackberry, which takes about 2 panels, something is probably about 3-4 meters, if no more. And then on the very end we have a tayberry, which is another climbing berry, and as well as quite vividly growing. So you can see the video, the footage of how many berries was loaded on those branches this summer. And these are just 3 plants. And just in the front of the fruit cage between the greenhouse and the shed, we have what we call our orchard. This is semi-dwarf trees, some dwarf trees which we planted over the last 4 years. Some are planted this year or last autumn and year before. So there's some pear, cherries, there's a plum as well here, and some hazel even. I thought that the hazel doesn't really do anything. The irony of life is that the most producing one is the dwarf limelight, which is actually really yummy apple, and we do have a so-called family pear tree which has 3 different drafts of a pear on it. Here we have you know, the kind of second part of the veggie garden. So this is one of the leftover raised beds from what we used to have before, where the chickens are, where the fruit, the currants are, and where these veggie beds are. We used to have a huge garden where I had just soil, kind of very Nordic approach to this. Unfortunately, we do have a horse there, and we did eventually give up with all the raised beds because, well, not raised beds, but they're kind of growing in the ground because of the horses. So this is how it looked from the, you know, the kind of looking at it behind the trees. There was this area I'm talking here about. How it looked amazing at the beginning. I really loved it. But yeah, it was just too much for me to kind of maintain. Then we had kids, and then I just kind of felt really overwhelmed, and we got chickens and we wanted to have more space for them. So we actually extended part of the area where there was loads of horsetail for the chickens. So this is how the garden looked before, you know, and I have had quite a lot of veggies. In this veggie bed, I have just like a mixture of some potato, yet again brassicas. So there's some cauliflower here, there's some broccoli, far too much stuff again, but this does much better, this kind of structure I have the nets on, much better than the small tunnel over there I had before. I just don't have enough of the structures here. And funnily enough, it shows why do I need it, because there's lots of butterflies, cabbage butterflies, and I have some other two plants which I'll show you later, which I have in fact been picking them off by hand, which was actually a great lesson in nature for my kids, because they could see the eggs of butterflies and the caterpillars, and then we'll just give them to chickens. But you know, here I kind of try to cover these plants. So this is broccolini, those huge plants. The thing is that they meant to actually fruit or flower or whatever at the beginning of this spring, and we have almost end of summer now, so I don't know what happened, some kind of malfunctioning. So I'm keeping them because I was thinking that maybe they will go in autumn, but you know, I don't think they will. I think it's something weird happening, and there is like almost extra branches growing between them. Here I added some sunflowers, there's some oca planted in as well. I have had garlic here, so there's one garlic which I left in a seed because started going in a seed before I even managed to get to it. I kind of forgot about them. I had only 3 plants of elephant garlic, and then the oca there. I think that's about it. Yeah, here I have more oca in pots, so I generally grow it in pots only because I do have a voles, I think there are rats as well. I think the voles are the problem, and they do dig the stuff out and eat it, and they don't seem to grow very well in the ground. So I put them in pots. I always put them in pots, but if I have any extra tubers left, I do put them in the there's a few more pots of potatoes here. I have put a blue, I think they're blue or red type of potatoes here. Actually, I don't quite remember. I think there's a label somewhere. I think it's blue and maybe, let's see. And yeah, blue Danube. Well, it's a blue potato. Meaning purple, really. Actually, I don't think I had that variety before, but I like to grow a few purple ones, but I think I need to start doing less and less of them because no one wants to eat them. These unfortunately keep getting uncovered by birds. That's another reason why I grow it's better to grow for me personally in the pots. But I do like to have few in a veggie bed if I have space to put a few potato plants. I just feel like they take a lot of space for the return on them. But anyways, here we have some mixed bed. So I have had some patipon there, some French beans, and some carrots. In between there, you see this variety is called Dior. I really like that name. And actually, generally, I love growing yellow French beans. This is very common in Poland. People grow yellow French beans. And I just prefer to grow something what you cannot buy in a shop. And here I see some carrots, and of course overseeded, and I forgot to tin them. So we have lots of tiny carrots, which is not really that easy to deal with. Some radishes, we've been planting lots of radishes one after another because my girls, well, they generally love picking them. Sometimes they eat them as well, but you know, at least the radishes did all right this year. And some nasturtium just for salads and for looking nice. So yeah, this patipon just grew so small, and these are the same plants planted in the same time, seeded in the same time as the other veggie bed I showed you before, and this just do so much worse. But I do think that might be because these veggie beds are first year, and I found that the soil is just not quite yet as nice and fluffy. This is absolute disaster. That's yellow courgette, so it's just, yeah, it's just sad, really sad. I think I try to seed some radishes here and stuff, but this is actually a perennial veggie bed. That's what it's meant to be. So I do have some sorrel here, as you see the really bushy started sorrel, and some horsetail there. It's not horsetail, gosh, horsetail is everywhere. We do have some horseradish. This is artichokes, Jerusalem artichokes, and they do have their own veggie bed, and absolutely do not plan to let them go anywhere else. These are far too big. I do need to put some kind of stakes around it, and definitely for next year, and I'm going to try to get something to hold them up. And the last veggie bed, well, not last, but this one is with carrots, and I have a few different varieties. I have a red carrot, yellow carrots, purple carrot here, and I think there is some orange one as well. I like to grow colorful carrots. They are actually doing alright, but they are so covered because I just don't want to risk the carrot root fly, because they do get generally in most of the places. And the last veggie bed in here is actually the one with the tuberosity, as I mentioned, the broccoli, which I kept picking butterfly eggs from. And yeah, this is what happens. So instead of having broccoli, I have a new plant growing in between the leaves. So I'm wondering what's going to actually happen with it. I'm still leaving them because I'm kind of curious. I'm hoping that something will actually happen. And that's the greenhouse.